Welcome to Valley Home Vibes, the podcast that's all about the sizzling hot real estate market right here in the Valley of the Sun. I'm your co host, GT Campanile, joined by my co host, Kevin Price. We're thrilled to have you join us here today as we delve deep into the captivating world of real estate right here in Phoenix. Whether you're a local Phoenician or someone considering a move to this desert oasis, Valley Home Vibes is your ultimate guide to everything you need to know about buying, selling, and investing in this vibrant market. We'll provide expert insights in a fun and lighthearted way while exploring Phoenix neighborhoods, chatting with local real estate professionals, and uncovering the hidden gems that make this city so special. From the breathtaking desert landscapes to the bustling urban centers, we've got our finger on the pulse of what makes Phoenix's real estate market tick. Without further ado, let's turn up the heat and start our exciting journey through the Phoenix real estate market. Welcome to Valley Home Vibes, where the Valley meets vibrant real estate. Okay, Kevin, we've seen
Yep.
quite a few changes here in Phoenix over the past 3 years, especially, particularly since COVID. But Phoenix has been a continuous growth market for decades. And I feel it's only an extension of that as people continue to find prosperity and opportunity here in the Valley of the Sun. What's going on in the Phoenix real estate market today?
Gotcha. Thank you for that. And it has definitely been a roller coaster the last few years. Currently, the average days on market for the contract, we're at 57 days. And back in July, we were at 72 days before the contract. So things are moving a little faster. We're still under that 60-day mark. So from 72 to 50, that's a couple weeks, one less mortgage payment you might have to make depending on when it falls. And the average sales price right now that we have for the Buckeye and Litchfield Park area is $224. Now that's the sales price per square foot. So square foot of your house times 224, that's the rough price that you're going to be having.
Now, I know you were taking some data from 2008 and comparing it.
I can tell you though, we had about 58,000 transactions in 2008, and currently we're at 68,000.
Year to
We're
date.
above 2008, but we're about 20,000 short of the end of 2022.
Okay. And what's the trend look like? Are we going to be selling around 85 to 90,000 units here in Phoenix? This is all Phoenix data, or is this Arizona data?
This is just Buckeye and Litchfield Park, actually. It's even more broken down just to our little area of the West Valley, the west of the West Valley.
And for our listeners and viewers, West Valley would probably be defined by going from, let's say, west to east. Buckeye in the west, all the way over to Glendale and Phoenix right in the east. Probably anything, if you look at a map, you'll see Highway 17 kind of splits things right down the middle. That's probably a good demarcation for anything west of that would be considered West Valley. And then going north, it goes as far as North Phoenix and Peoria. And then to the south, it would be include also like Levine and a lot of the newer development along the 202. So that's what we consider West Valley. Yeah, but
Mhm.
continue, Kevin.
All right, so here's what we're talking about. And I was mistaken in the information. 81,000 is the annual sales rate in December of 2022. So you can see as it moves up through the months. So way over here on the left side is 2008. We had a total of 58 finished off the year. And the far side on September this year, we're at 68,000 in our annual sales.
And speaking of sales for this year, where do you see them going for, say, the fourth quarter and then, say, the first quarter of 2024?
I really believe that things are going to stay the same. We always have an annual dip around this time of year. I would say October is when they really slow down after school starts. And then towards the end of the year, when people are looking towards January, that's when it steps up a little bit around the November, December range. And then come January, it increases a little bit more, but really by March and April is when everything really takes off. You got spring break, you have job transfers, the weather's turning nicer finally for us after our super cold Arizona winter. And and then people are ready to move before the end of the school year. Overall, I say all that to say that we're probably going to stay pretty steady, maybe a little up by the end of the year, but I don't anticipate any real big drastic changes.
As anecdotally, I've been hearing feedback from real estate professionals that they're starting to see bidding wars. And this is something you typically might see during the springtime, right? The spring rush, as everybody's they're doing their shopping for homes, then they're
Mhm.
trying to make their moves like during early summer before the kids go back to school. Maybe they can squeeze in a vacation, right? But typically people are really trying to close those deals like in May, and then they end up moving early summer. So I'm hearing that there are these bidding wars, but I don't think it's, of
Yeah.
course, in every city. So I have
No.
heard that there's some towns where you're going to have a little bit of some buying power, like typically like the Maricopas. Maricopas always has always been a place where you could go to for a little bit of a better deal, right? The home prices out there are typically a little better. And Maricopa is not necessarily West Valley. I don't think anybody considers it West Valley. However, it's right because it's way south. And but typically people are going there to find a better deal. And that isn't
Mhm.
to say anything about the homes there are amazing. It's a great community.
Yeah.
And then of course the Buckeyes. Buckeye would be your typical West Valley town. And Buckeye is also demarcated by Highway 10. And I hear that there's typically people getting some good deals on homes south of 10. And that's where you have a lot of development and a lot of great new homes, particularly with like Sundance neighborhood. There's, it can be bidding wars even in Buckeye. And it just depends on the season at this point.
Mhm. Yeah, I have heard that you're starting to get back into, depending on where you're at, of course, multiple offer situations again. People are understanding that prices are high, but it's still better now than waiting for the spring time because then the prices will be possibly even higher. So even though it's elevated right now, you are getting people still multiple offers on the same property that the agents will have to work through. It's great for the sellers. They're getting what they are hoping for. And sometimes the buyers are even able to get a deal because the sellers have been on the market such a long time. Like I said, we're at around 57 days. Maybe they want to go. They're willing to compromise and go ahead and let it go for a little less than what they want. But in the end, everybody wins out.
Phoenix is Phoenix has traditionally been a boom bust economy going way back, right? Scottsdale used to be the hot thing, of course,
Mhm.
coming into the 80s, and then everything bottomed out. And then there was another run up, and we all know the whole story of the great financial crisis. And that, again, things tanked and bottomed out again. And a lot of people, I think there's a lot of that lingers in the memory. But this time around, I think if you're really looking at the fundamentals, and there's two arguments, of course, there's people on both sides of the whole supply and demand story. There is still a lot of pent up demand waiting on the sidelines because they were priced out, right? Because interest rates rose so quickly. And then there's the
Yeah.
supply issue, which that's where it gets gray. I hear arguments that we don't have enough and low supply. And then I hear arguments that actually, because not a lot of homes are recorded or listed in the NMLS, particularly with new builds, right? Like you might have a built home, but
Mhm.
because it's just sitting there, it's not sold. So if you don't have a certificate of occupancy, it's never ever going to hit any kind of database, right? then there's that whole picture. And people think we have an oversupply potentially right now. Maybe it sits somewhere in the middle. I do believe that because of the demand situation, that we're just going to be waiting for those rates, the rate picture, interest rate picture. Once those rates potentially start inching down, I think the market's going to stay strong. Now, will it crash? That's that's been really a hot topic of debate because of that supply side. But you can't ignore the fact that there is a ton of millennials that are wanting,
Mhm.
get into a home, right?
Yeah, they've been sitting on the sidelines the last few years. They finally got enough money saved up, and we have the most, I believe we have the most 33-year-olds, which is going to be around your time of your first time home buyer. Now, this is nationwide. So we have a lot of people that have finally saved up enough money and they're looking to buy a house. It's just going to continue because then you have the 33-year-olds turn 34, and then we have another batch of 33-year-old. So for the next few years, there's going to be a lot of people buying. They're financially in a position to make that next step. I also saw though that the home builders have actually slowed down a little bit, just a little bit, not much, but currently new home construction is accounting for 30% of the transactions. We are at one of the highest levels of new home builders dominating this market right now. They're more in the driver's seat than a reseller.
Builders have a lot of power, right? And
Absolutely.
something to be aware of with builders is that builders are selling for a way different reason than a resale home, where
Yeah.
an owner is emotionally wrapped up, right, in the sale of their home. Sometimes they have to sell out of desperation. Sometimes they can afford to sit and wait, but nonetheless, they're selling their home.
Right.
And with builders, they're built for efficiency and they're built to really try to profit off of the sale of that home. And
Of
so
course.
there's a lot more tools in their tool belt they can use to
Yeah.
move that house. And I don't think that they are lowering prices right now, correct, to move inventory.
No, not really. The prices are staying, they're what you would say they're moving sideways. They're pretty much staying consistent. They are offering incentives is what they're doing. The what I've heard is now these change monthly. They're like monthly specials that the home builders are able to do. Last I heard though, they were offering up to 6% towards closing cost or buying down your interest rate. And 6%, depending on our average home price, that could be close to 2 percentage points lower, which puts you in the high fives right now, or mid to high fives, which is a lot better than a mid seven.
Interesting. Yeah. And of course, it depends on I would imagine the loan program because different loan programs have different guidelines for seller concessions, right? So for instance, conventional, you've got, there's a different, it's graduated depending on your down payment. So if you're putting like that minimum down payment on a conventional, which is typically like 5%, they might allow only 3% concessions. Whereas if you're putting 20+% down, they may allow up to 9% on conventional. So conventional has a pretty broad range.
Yeah.
Now compare that to FHA, which a lot of people do use that FHA to get into their particularly first time home buyers. FHA allows 6%. So I find it interesting that the home builder has said, we're going to give you 6%. I'm thinking maybe they're going FHA for some of these buyers. Have you heard anything on that?
No, I haven't seen what loan product they're offering. The key is they want to drive business to their financial company side of things. So you use
Mm,
their in-house lender, then they give you the 6% incentive back.
got it. Okay. Yeah. I know oftentimes you'll hear these really great incentives and
Mhm.
sometimes it's misleading because they give them to you in the form of upgrades or they buy that rate down. So I think it's how you can chop up those incentives in various ways to make it work for, like you said, the consumer. But no matter how you look at this picture, it's really astounding how much the West Valley has grown. I I know
Okay.
that the average home price now for Arizona, it is this data comes from, is 551,400. That's what I was seeing on Armless.
Yeah.
And that's a big jump from I mean,
Just a few years
pre-COVID, I
ago.
think
Yeah.
just a few years ago. And so it does beg the question, like, if you are a firm believer in market fundamentals of what goes up must come down, or at least revert to the mean, you wonder, will this market sustain that? I think there's a lot of positive
Mm.
factors go in our direction, which has encouraged all of us to think that we think it'll hold, such as Taiwan Semiconductor go going in North Phoenix, which will be massive job growth. And then, of course, the 303 corridor, which is smack dab in the West
Yeah.
Valley, which brings a ton of supply chain jobs.
No, tons of jobs. The whole 303 is lined with these big buildings.
So I'm optimistic, and I think
Mm.
that Phoenix is gonna be holding. I don't think we're gonna necessarily see this. What some people, the naysayers at least on a lot of YouTube, are saying that we're going to see Armageddon again, and it's hard to see that at where from where we are right now.
Yeah. I don't anticipate a crash like what they're saying. If you're waiting for a crash to buy a house, you're never going to buy a house. I think right now the prices in the Phoenix area, not just Buckeye, Litchfield Park, but the Phoenix area are going to pretty much stay where they're at. There may be a little dip, but overall, I couldn't imagine anything like what would actually represent a crash. They may just be saying the same, a little higher, a little lower, but overall, I don't anticipate, barring a World War III or some huge external event, I don't see anything really changing for our market area.
Yeah, I know that the Crawford report, which is a lot of the data that you're analyzing and pulling from, have only showed a lot of positive factors, and that the market's gonna, at least in the look back, is gonna maintain its trajectory. However, this could be something that happens over many years, depending on where interest rates are. And a lot of housing economists that are not necessarily focused on Phoenix, they're focused on a national picture. A lot of them have been saying that we're probably going to see a lot of moderation, and we're going to see maybe a multi-year, like, even trickling down over the years. It won't be a fall off or a crash. It's just going to be prices are going to float back down to reasonable values over a very long period of time.
Yeah, that's a feeling I have. I don't think there's going to be any sudden drop off, no cliff or anything like that. Just going to be slow and steady, a little higher, a little lower. I think will mirror the seasonal trends a little bit closer as we maybe come down to what is more people would consider acceptable. Because if you're a first time home buyer and you hear the average price is $500,000, that's intimidating. That's going to keep you in a renter status. So I think for a while it's going to stay where we're at. I've heard of that there could be programs coming out to where I believe the government actually helps get these rates a little bit lower, more like a program, not with the federal interest rate, more of a federal program that people can get into a product.
So the recent news I heard was that the FHA may step in to make it even easier to get into a home by reducing that 3.5% down
Okay.
minimum. And so it may be that you can get into a home with even a lower down payment. So that would help for sure. But this gets into a slippery slope, because if
Mm.
people aren't really putting skin in the game on their homes, right?
Yeah.
You, it does again beg the question, okay, or will we see a rise in defaults because of that? The bigger the down payment, the more you're invested in that house, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the reason that it was put in the first place, to make you hold you a little bit more accountable. And one benefit about those big down payments is sometimes it gives you instant equity to where you can pull that money out and use it for a refinance project or update your house. Plenty of different things that you can do when you have that higher down payment requirement.
You bet. I think it's super important for folks to save, but to me, at least those
Yeah.
minimum down payment requirements. Not it's part of the pride factor that you be able to put a down payment. But as you stated, you do have equity, and if things do have like all of a sudden a kind of a pullback in the market, and maybe home prices decline for a short period, guess what? You're not totally upside down, right? You do have that equity that's built in there.
Mhm.
And then on the next run up, you're probably going to be out of that kind of danger zone and you're going to have equity again. But having that cushion, I think, gives you peace of mind that if anything bad were
Mhm.
to happen, you would be able to get out from beneath that home.
Yeah, absolutely. And the housing market always bounces back, always comes back even higher than it was. So if you put in that down payment and you have equity, and then say something happens and the home prices fall, you're still not underwater. You'll still be even. So when things do come back up, then you made your money back and then some. The housing market always comes back. We can look at charts showing how the prices dip down and then they even come back higher compared to where we were just a few years ago. We're still moving higher to those pre-COVID levels.
That's right. I know we can go on here forever with this subject because we just love following this stuff, but we're going to say goodbye. So, signing off from Valley Home Vibes, my name is GT Campanile, and I look forward to seeing you again, along with my co host.
Kevin Price, thank you for your time.
Take care, everybody.